The world watched in horror on June 12, 2025, when an Air India flight crashed just moments after departing from Ahmedabad. The modern aircraft, carrying 260 souls, was on a routine flight. Its ascent into the morning sky a familiar sight for those on the ground. But something went catastrophically wrong in the seconds after its wheels left the runway. The powerful engines, designed for reliability and performance, fell silent. The subsequent loss of all thrust led to an uncontrollable descent, culminating in a tragedy that sent shockwaves through the global aviation community. The immediate aftermath was a scene of devastation, leaving families, investigators, and the public with a profound sense of loss and a desperate need for answers. This event was not just another air disaster, it was a perplexing puzzle from the very beginning. The aircraft involved was a state-of-the-art model with an excellent safety record, making a dual-engine failure on takeoff almost unthinkable under normal circumstances. The weather was clear, and communications from the flight deck before the incident gave no indication of any trouble. The sudden and complete nature of the failure baffled experts. How could two independent, highly reliable engines stop working at the most critical phase of flight? This question hung heavy in the air alongside the grief, setting the stage for one of the most intense and closely watched air crash investigations in recent memory. The human toll of the crash was immense, with 260 lives extinguished in an instant. Each passenger and crew member had a story, a family, and a future that was tragically cut short. For the families left behind, the sudden void was filled with unimaginable pain and a torrent of questions that had no immediate answers. They grappled not only with their personal loss, but also with the public nature of the tragedy. The crash became a global news story, and the search for a cause was broadcast for all to see. The weight of this public scrutiny added another layer of complexity for those who were simply trying to mourn and make sense of their new reality. In the days that followed, India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, took the lead, securing the crash site and recovering the crucial black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder, and the flight data recorder. These devices held the key to understanding what happened in the final moments of the flight. The international community, including the US National Transportation Safety Board, offered its support, recognizing the global implications of the crash. The investigation began with a singular, urgent mission to piece together the sequence of events factually and methodically, ensuring that such a disaster would never happen again. The world waited, hoping the data would provide clarity, not more confusion. The preliminary report from the AAIB, released weeks after the crash, provided the first concrete and, honestly, startling evidence of what transpired. The flight data recorder was unequivocal. Seconds after the aircraft became airborne, both of the engine fuel control switches were moved from their normal run position to the cutoff position. This single action is designed to stop the flow of kerosene to the engines, effectively starving them of the fuel they need to operate. The result was as immediate as it was disastrous, a complete and simultaneous loss of power from both engines. This finding confirmed the how of the engine failure, but opened a far more difficult and sensitive line of inquiry into the why. The cockpit voice recorder added a chilling layer of human drama to the technical data. In the final, frantic seconds, the CVR captured a brief, confused exchange between the two pilots. One pilot was recorded asking the other, "Why did you shut off the engines?" The second pilot's response was one of denial, insisting they had not touched the controls. The report, in its careful and objective language, did not identify which pilot spoke which line. It presented the raw conversation without interpretation, leaving the sequence of events on the flight deck shrouded in mystery. This exchange suggests a profound disconnect and confusion in a space where clear communication and coordinated action are paramount for safety. Crucially, the preliminary report did not assign blame or offer any conclusions about who was at fault. It is a document of facts, not of judgment. Investigators were careful to state that they had not yet determined whether the movement of the switches was a deliberate act by one of the pilots, an accidental or inadvertent action, or the result of an unforeseen technical malfunction that caused the switches to move on their own. Each of these possibilities carries vastly different implications. The report's purpose was simply to lay out what the recorders showed, establishing a factual baseline for the deeper, more complex investigation that would need to follow to uncover the root cause. This lack of a definitive cause is standard for a preliminary report, which is meant to share initial findings quickly with the aviation industry to identify any urgent safety issues. However, the nature of the findings, a direct action in the cockpit leading to the crash, created a vacuum of information that was quickly filled with speculation. The report confirmed that the fuel was cut off, but it did not and could not explain the context. Was it a moment of extreme stress, a misunderstanding of a procedure, a mechanical anomaly, or something else entirely? The report provided the what, but the why remained the central unanswered question haunting the investigation. In the wake of the preliminary report's release, some media outlets began connecting the dots in a way that investigators had deliberately avoided. Citing unnamed sources, several international news organizations published stories that went beyond the facts of the report, suggesting that the captain had intentionally cut power to the engines. These reports created a narrative of pilot culpability before the investigation had even begun to analyze the human factors and technical evidence in depth. This rush to judgment sent ripples of anger and frustration through the global pilot community, who felt their colleagues were being tried and convicted in the court of public opinion without a shred of conclusive evidence. The response from official bodies and pilot unions was swift and unified. The AAIB and the NTSB both issued public statements cautioning against drawing premature and speculative conclusions from their initial findings. They reiterated that a preliminary report is not meant to assign fault and that the investigation was far from over. Pilot associations, including the Federation of Indian Pilots, took an even stronger stance. They condemned the media coverage as defamatory and irresponsible, arguing that it undermined the integrity of the official investigation and inflicted unnecessary pain on the families of the flight crew, who were also grieving their loss. The FIP and other pilot groups went as far as initiating legal action against the media outlets they believed had crossed the line from reporting to speculating. This move highlighted the deep chasm that often exists between the methodical, slow-paced process of an accident investigation and the fast-paced, competitive nature of the 24-hour news cycle. For pilots, the principle at stake was fundamental to aviation safety. Investigations must be free from external pressure and public speculation to arrive at the truth. Blaming the crew prematurely, they argued, could lead investigators down a wrong path and cause them to overlook a potential mechanical or design flaw that could endanger future flights. The controversy also reignited a long-standing debate within the aviation industry about the potential use of cockpit video recorders. Proponents argued that in a case like this, video evidence would have been invaluable, showing exactly what happened on the flight deck and who moved the switches. However, pilots' unions have historically opposed video recording in the cockpit, citing major privacy concerns and the potential for the footage to be misused for disciplinary actions or leaked to the public, turning tragedies into spectacles. This crash became a powerful case study for both sides of that argument, demonstrating the desperate need for clear evidence, while also highlighting the sensitivities surrounding surveillance in the workplace. As of today, July 19, 2025, the investigation into the Air India crash rests on a handful of established facts amidst a sea of unknowns. We know for certain, thanks to the flight data recorder, that the fuel control switches for both engines were moved to the cutoff position moments after takeoff. We know this action directly caused the catastrophic loss of power that led to the crash. The cockpit voice recorder also confirms that there was confusion and denial between the pilots regarding this action in the final seconds. These facts provide a clear picture of the immediate mechanical cause of the accident, but they represent only the first chapter of a much longer and more complex story. The list of what remains unknown, however, is far longer and more significant. The central mystery is who or what moved the switches. The preliminary report does not tell us which pilot may have acted, or if a third party was involved, or if a mechanical failure could have caused the switches to change position without human input. We do not know the context of the pilot's conversation. Was it a reaction to a sudden, confusing emergency or the result of a deliberate action? The psychological and physiological states of the pilots, their training history, and any potential stresses they were facing are all critical areas that are still under intense investigation and remain unknown to the public. The path forward involves a meticulous and painstaking investigation that will likely take a year or more to complete. Investigators from the AAIB will deconstruct every component of the aircraft, with a special focus on the cockpit controls and fuel systems, looking for any sign of a technical malfunction. They will conduct extensive simulations to try and recreate the scenario. Furthermore, they will delve deeply into the pilots' backgrounds, their 24-hour history before the flight, and their training records. Every piece of data, from maintenance logs to personnel files, will be scrutinized to build a complete picture of all the potential contributing factors that led to the tragedy. Ultimately, it is essential for the public and the media to exercise patience and restraint. The urge to find a simple explanation and someone to blame is a natural human reaction to such a devastating event, but jumping to conclusions is counterproductive and harmful. The integrity of the investigation depends on a methodical and unbiased approach, free from the pressure of speculation. The final report, when it is eventually published, will provide the most complete account possible of what happened on that tragic day. Until then, the most responsible action is to wait for the facts, honor the memory of the 260 people who were lost, and trust the process designed to make air travel safer for everyone.